You're listening to Shoe In, covering the ins and outs of all things footwear, from sneakers to heels, loafers to slippers, and every type of shoe in between. Brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. And now your footwear insiders, Matt Priest and Andy Polk.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Shoe and Show. Thanks for joining us for this week's great episode. All our episodes are great, but we're excited about this week's episode. Exactly. There are different levels of greatness. There are a few good, but mostly great episodes. If you go back to the 300 plus episodes we've recorded, but all the conversations are great because this podcast is really about the business side of the footwear industry. And it's really about casual conversations about what's happening in the marketplace to give people hopefully better ideas or new ways forward to enhance and increase their business. And that's really what this is all about. So thanks again for joining us this week. There is a lot going on in the marketplace today, Matt.
There is. And we needed someone to help us kind of sort through it and to better strategize about the ways in which consumers are engaging with product and at what within which channels and how to strategize around which channels to focus on, something our industry needs to do more of and needs to improve upon as most industries. And so Chelsea Mueller, who is a senior consultant for FitForCommerce, she has joined us today on Shoe and Show. Chelsea, thanks for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me. Happy to talk about what we can do in the footwear industry to level up.
So let's talk about leveling up. That sounds like a gaming term. Not that I'm a gamer, but that's what it sounds like. Talk to me about who FitForCommerce is and what you all do to help companies level up.
Sure. So FitForCommerce is a boutique agency where we specifically focus on e-commerce and omni-channel strategy. So we're the people who come in and help you make a plan and give you the details of how to execute it, so that you can, like I said, level up, go ahead and see increased conversion rate, better adoption of best practices to really be where your customers need you to be and serve them in the most efficient way possible.
So let's start off right off the bat, Chelsea. What are like three things that you think are really critical for companies to understand? And you, in full disclosure, you guys are intimately involved in the footwear industry, so you know the footwear industry. You have footwear clients, so you have some takeaways that are specific to footwear. But at the outset, what are kind of three things that kind of companies should be thinking about as it relates to their strategies, no matter which channel they're selling product in?
So one of the big things has really changed in the last few years is that this idea of buy online, pick up in store used to be really innovative. It was like you could shop online and say, okay, I'm going to go get it in the store in 2 hours. And now it's table stakes. That is a thing customers expect. And a lot of things right now, regardless of channel, have accelerated due to the pandemic. The way people shop has changed. The adoption of mobile payments, of being able to use your phone to use a buy now, pay later, those things have changed too. Just the expectations of your customers about where and how they shop and pay has changed. And I would say that the expectation of timing has changed too. So like I said, the buy online, pick up in store, buy online, return to store have both become more valuable as customers have gotten used to shopping on their phone, but still want that brick and mortar experience of being able to get it really fast. Footwear specifically does really well on the return side. Of being able to shop online and then go and return it to the store, which certainly is helpful from an overhead perspective. The pickup in store is still lacking within the footwear vertical. So it's certainly an area to look at, but not the only one who's trying to find how the way to make that work and work quickly. So yeah, I think the other big piece, you asked for three, would be optimizing the search and navigation on websites. Again, customers are used to being on their phones, doing things really fast, and more adoption there. So the more that we think about how people can easily find things and get them is the core of what we're talking about.
Yeah. So a lot of that is, I guess, in some ways, reducing the friction to sale, right? Like making it easier to search, make it easier to click one button and buy it, making it easy to say pick up or do this or do that, like completely frictionless sales. I think it's interesting that, number one, I like tables and I like steaks on tables. So I like table steaks comment. Ribeye in particular, not the petite like fillets. I like the big steaks, the marble steaks.
Delicious.
But when you're exactly, I'm hungry right now. Lunch is coming up now. But when we're talking about it, it's really interesting because through the pandemic, we've heard from a lot of people who are just like, oh, we're so innovative. We got this stuff going. So it's interesting to hear like just straight talk and being like, everybody's doing that. It's not exactly, if you're not doing it, why aren't you doing it? You should be doing it. So as you guys look forward to 2022, what are some new things, maybe not even in footwear, but elsewhere that people are doing that are innovative or creative or being kind of discussed or kind of gamed out that will kind of help, in the future?
Sure. I mean, I think one of the areas where we're seeing a lot of growth and change is actually with payments, which again is spurred out of this customers being more comfortable shopping online and then looking for different ways to do that, and have started to see that they have choices there. So where previously it was like, okay, cool, we can buy online, we're comfortable saving our credit card, and so it's a one click and that's great. Now it's, okay, am I looking at a buy now, pay later, which is becoming more common? Or am I looking at alternative payment? So something like pay by Venmo or Bitcoin, even, and we're seeing that on some sites. And actually the Venmo one, Amazon, it just announced yesterday that they'll be taking Venmo going forward. So, and right now, I mean, that's something that when we look at our best practices, and we did this omni-channel retail index this last year, where we mystery shopped 100 different retailer sites across 13 verticals, more than 250 criteria. And one of them that we looked at was this, to see, are we starting to see people take this adoption? Because we see it on the roadmap, we see it coming. And it's like 13% of your major retailers are taking some form of alternative payment. And that can definitely be a game changer as you start to think about how you're going to capture Gen Z, who are less likely to have a credit card, not because they don't want to have a credit card, but because they've got a lot of debt and they're not comfortable building up their credit that way, and instead would rather make an agreement with either using Venmo or with like an afterpay where I'm just going to make this one time, I'm going to do 4 payments deal. So thinking of just kind of how people are comfortable with digital currency and being there to accept it.
I mean, we think about efficiency in so many different ways. And it's one of the things that we do. We do consumer surveys throughout the year. And for the longest time, and even to this day, we have consumers who like the brick and mortar experience because of its efficiency, and because it's most of us live within a stone's throw of some footwear retailer, whether it's DSW or Famous or Shoe Carnival or department store. And so to actually order it online, even though the transaction may be efficient because you can do it from your home, you don't get the product for a multitude of days. So talk about how you all help companies measure. We all bring our own biases, not negative bias, but a bias to the way in which we try to analyze what is most efficient, or what is most innovative, or what is something that everyone else is doing. We have to offer it up. How do you kind of help people critically think and get outside their own bias and say, you know what, it's actually most efficient to have the product in my brick and mortar store just down the street from our consumer? How do you help people analyze those things?
Sure. We do a lot of benchmarking. I mean, obviously I mentioned the omni-channel retail index, but we also do one-offs. So we can take a particular customer and we can look at your competitors, you in your general market, and then where you are across all of e-commerce or omni-channel, to see where you sit compared to your competitors. Where do you sit in the market? What are other people doing that's working well that you haven't yet done? So kind of like a gap analysis. So it's benchmark and then set a gap analysis. And then we also help you determine KPIs. So when we're going to go in and test something, here's a suggestion of what's going to see lift. This is what we're seeing work really well for other people to reduce that friction, to help you manage inventory, to just overall customer satisfaction. we set those KPIs so that we can measure them and make a decision of how it's actually impacted. We have a lot of experience. So some things we can say, for example, like we'd give you search enhancements. Say, here are some things you need to look at to improve your online search. Like including images in search is a really good example. We know that people who use search, the conversion rate is 3 times what it is if they don't use it. That's a standard. So we can kind of give you out the gate without even digging in. Here's what we see. We know that you're going to see at least this if we do an improvement of getting people to use search. So how do we get them to use more search? What are our metrics here? So that's kind of the starting point to being able to analyze that.
How do you guys balance capital investments in technology, right? Like, I mean, I think a lot of people have websites now, hopefully, and they're using a number of tools to kind of understand consumers. Maybe some have more advanced technologies than others, but is it a mix of making sure that you're actually using the technology appropriately? I mean, I still see people misusing Excel and Word documents and things like that. Like, I don't think we're fully proficient in digital as people think they are. Or is it sometimes actually about integrating new technology and having to make an investment to up the game?
Well, I think it depends on every brand and retailer. Kind of depends on your setup. Are you fully utilizing your internal resources? Sometimes, staff can just be taxed. Sometimes we're running lean and bringing on new technology and who can get in and actually use it. I think you're absolutely right to call out that sometimes we bring on new technology and then don't use all the features. So you do the sales cycle, you hear all the bells and whistles. I'm like, that's great. We only really have time to use this one piece of it. And then you're not seeing the full return. And so that's certainly something that FitForCommerce looks at. So we look at, organizational structure, so teams necessary to be successful with new technology. Could you use the technology you already have? Or can we find a vendor or tool that fits your company, both from a internal resource perspective and from a financial perspective, that fits in there where you're going to actually see the return you need?
Yeah, I think that's definitely the hardest part of trying to figure out the digital stuff, right? It's like your company culture integrating in the technology to fit within that culture, not just because it can do this or that or the other. It's like, will people use this? Is it easy to train on? And is it useful to our consumer? So it's like, and then is it secure? I mean, are we going to get hacked, right? Like,
you always hear like our employees within our companies like, oh, we're implementing SAP. It's going to be a terrible month. Like everyone knows when it's coming and they all dread it.
Well, it's one of those where change is hard. Like once you have the new stuff live and you're seeing the wins, then you're like, yeah, this was a great decision. Yeah. But anytime something's new, there's always this everyone's gonna have to sit down and learn how to use this thing. So yeah, we look at what does that training look like? What comes from the vendor? What can we support? How do you make sure that whatever tool you're bringing on, that your staff is ready and enabled to actually use it?
Yeah. Well, it's better to struggle with the training than it is struggle to find a new job if the business doesn't adapt.
That's true.
That's true. There's one way to look at it in that way. I'm also really interested in kind of how consumers are changing the way they're shopping and buying. I mean, we see a lot more social media buy-throughs than we've ever seen. And also, we know there's a lot of money being put into voice technology, not just like Alexa, but, all these different things you can start to search for are purchased through voice. How do you guys take a look at that? Are these things, do they have staying power? Is this the future? Or is this just part of everything else we're dealing with as part of channel?
Everything's the future. Yeah. I mean, I think voice search is absolutely the direction things are going. And you're seeing more and more of that, even when you're searching on, say, Google, where there's the way that it returns results is based around the way that we talk. And we're seeing more of that with search on site too. Any sort of natural language processing where it's not you're typing in, red shoe size 7, you're going to say hey, it's going to be a question. Do you have any shoes in my size that are red? Or you have red shoes in my size. And we're seeing more of that, where we're wanting a website, for example, to be holding shoe size. So once you've said, like, this is my size, especially if you're shopping from a brand retailer where you come back to that same brand over and over, they are your go-to. Maybe you are somebody who does color runs, so you're in buying new shoes, every month for gotta fit in, you gotta have the right colorway. Having that stuff stored, so when you go and do a search of just say my size, it's going to return back what you're looking for, and you're getting more comfortable with. You talk to Siri on your phone, you talk to Alexa, you talk to Cortana, all of those things. As people get more comfortable using them in their homes, that becomes how they shop too. So we need to make sure that we stay abreast of that and mindful.
Yeah. I also hope that it's not too smart and starts to understand our voice of emotion. If we're sad and it's like, oh, Matt's sad, let me say, do you want a new pair of shoes, Matt? And I'll ship it to you right to your house. And Matt be like, yes, please. Like, let's not get to that point.
From the retailer side, that might not be bad. There's a lot of stuff that is creepy when we think about it, but if it sells it, you might be okay with some of it being a little bit like, oh, I guess it already knew my shoe size. That's nice.
Well, I remember the tracking technology retailers use on smartphones when you walk in their stores, and what you get.
Yeah, no one reads the fine print.
So my question for you, Chelsea, is when will Meta become table stakes? How are you guys thinking about kind of the virtual space and the retail experience virtually?
When we talk about virtual a little bit more, we're actually right now thinking more about how that works in an omni-channel environment. So how does that help for trying on and kind of that concierge component as that being a path forward? So, the gap that we're always trying to deal with when you're looking at the online component is, how do you get that same experience you'd have in a store when you're on a website? And people do that with 3D, you do that with video. But if you had virtual, where you could be in a virtual fitting room and you could have a sales associate that could show you things, and you could kind of get a visual of how it might fit your foot using AI to see fit. Those types of virtual shopping. What the hurdle and uncanny valley for customers is on that, I'm not sure yet, because it's still fresh. But I think as customers get more used to using virtual technologies, they're going to want it in their shopping. So we're watching.
Well, it's interesting because as you're explaining this, Chelsea, I'm thinking to myself, you know what? When I buy shoes online, which I do most of my shoes, I look at the colorway. I wear the size 12 all the time, in perpetuity. So that's something I don't think I need, right? And maybe I'll never think I need it, but part of being like an innovative retailer is dreaming up those things people think they don't need. And then when they unveil them, then you realize you can't live without them, right? So there's this fine line between what those things are. And they may not meet the needs of everybody who's shopping on your site or within your metaverse. But at the same time, it might get to a point where it's just second nature that's how you go and shop. And I might love it. I don't know. But when you talk about it, I'm like, yeah, I don't think I need that.
Well, and it may be something too that it isn't for you because you're a customer who already knows what you want.
Right.
But it might be for more of your casual shopper. It might be for somebody who's new to your particular brand. So, you're lucky you're a size 12 everywhere, but some people, you're buying from one brand. It varies from sizes from, even from like a hiking boot versus something you might wear to work. There can be some variation. And a customer who's maybe not very knowledgeable might really appreciate that, or possibly somebody who's normally I only shop in the store, and now I'm going to try and shop online, and I need that confidence. They need, whether they need that from, the metaverse, or maybe a concierge type of I can't believe I just used metaverse without flinching.
Throw in blockchain and we'll have
but you might also see people who want concierge in a different way. They might want to just be able to use live chat in that way. They might want to use SMS text that way. I think that there's value in assessing where your customers are at and how they prefer to communicate. And it's not going to be the same for every single brand. Like that's the piece too. When we talk about benchmarking, you shouldn't be exactly the same as everybody else. You need to be doing the things that work best for your brand and that fit your customer demographic. So, if you have customer base that, no, they always only buy online. They don't, they'll pick up or return in store, but really they're fine. You're not seeing them asking for concierge stuff. Okay, so then we don't worry about virtual fitting room, but what do they need? How do we look at maybe replenishment for them? How do we look at ways to be like, you bought this long ago. We know that you're ready for new shoes. Have you considered this? Mm-hmm. So, I think sometimes we get really fixated on the innovative, and not hitting table stakes that fit for our customers. Mm. So I'm pro innovative, don't get me wrong, but we want to make sure you're getting your bread and butter done first.
We get
a lot of food references.
It's almost lunchtime. I'm sorry.
So hungry. So hungry. I think you're right. I think we got to look at what's innovative to keep going to see where things are going to land. So when they do land, we're there to take advantage. But I just don't think people really. This is like drivers, right? You ask somebody like, "Are you a driver?" Of course, I'm a good driver. They're probably a terrible driver. Are you good at technology and digital? Of course, we're doing that. It's like, actually, you're not. Like, you're not that efficient and proficient yet. And I think we're getting there. And we're maturing in what we're doing, but I completely agree. Like the customer wisdom, I guess, with digital is so rich right now that as we start to see more technologies added to it, it's really about understanding the closet of the consumer, how long they wear their shoes, what type they may not have in their closet to make better suggestions, only showing their size. Only showing brands they've been to in the past, maybe showing so it's like this real, like not just concierge in terms of like going into the store and having that touch point, but like a digital concierge. It's just like, this person doesn't want to shop everything. They really want to be specific, and we're going to message to them. We pulled this specifically for you in the digital sense and like making it customized in that way. And I think we're just now getting to that point at the very moment we're talking about virtual reality. And it's like, so it's an interesting point. And I guess it's just like human nature. We always do this, right? It's like before we even get all our steps right, or like already jump into the next thing. But I do think there's a lot of exciting stuff in the boring side that's happening, right? Like boring is great because boring means bottom line. So, I feel like people just need to keep sticking to that point of like optimizing what they got.
Well, I think, people made a lot of gains in the last bit, really adopting some of the kind of the standard best practices and saw that lift. Right. And so it's like, oh, we're doing great. And, going back to the omnichannel index, like, so looking at top 100, 100 different retailers, the highest score of best practice adoption that we had was 73%. So the person doing the absolute best was still only hitting 73% of best practice.
They got a grade on a curve there, Chelsea.
Exactly. So there's a lot that can be done, a lot of opportunity. So once you start seeing that win, it's like, okay, take a step back. What else can we do that's smart, that can build on? Okay, we put in these basic pieces. What can we build on here to ramp up efficiently without, having to spend a whole lot of money? Where if we started putting in new tools here, how do we optimize them? How do we make them perform better? How do we help our teams use them more efficiently? So sometimes it's even a matter of that. If you already have the resources, but they're not being applied the way they need to be, and having some sort of expert step in. That's what we do a lot of the time, is come in and say, here's an assessment of where you're at. Let's give you some playbooks. Let's do a workshop. Let's walk through what you're doing now and how you can do it better.
I like it.
Awesome. The Sherpa, you guys are shoe Sherpas in this thing, so that's awesome. FitForCommerce, you can Google it and learn more about their services and products. They are an FFA member, and we're happy to have them. And Chelsea, thank you so much for for coming on today and just talking about that. In some ways, it's probably therapeutic for people to hear that they're not that far off of everybody else, right? Because sometimes we think we're really far behind. Well, some people think they're really far ahead. If you're only at the 73, that's a C-, folks. The best in class is a C-. So a lot of room to grow without having to do capital investment. But you got to be, as Chelsea said, smart about what you're doing and why you're doing it. So again, Chelsea, thank you very much.
Thank you guys for having me.
Awesome, folks. Shoeandshow.com is our website. You can go back and hear all our episodes. You can drop us a note if you have ideas for a topic we should discuss or guests we should have. As always, we're really appreciative of you listening, and please spread the word to your other colleagues. We wish you all the best. We wish you great holiday sales as holidays started months ago, and will hopefully continue into 2022 if retailers have their say to extend the holiday season even further. So we'll find creative ways to do that and keep moving shoes and making sales. But on behalf of Matt and myself, again, we appreciate you listening. Until next time, Shoe In is out.
Shoe In has been brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org.